Hey, and welcome to Stay Human with Amy Bell. I just wanted to address something today. It's just a little thing. It's a little thing that can make a big difference. Which, if you've followed any of my stuff before, you'll know that I'm really into little things that make a big difference. It's a little thing. It's an idea. It's a misunderstanding that keeps kind of finding its way into my training room and my coaching space from time to time. Bugs me a little bit. It bugs me because when people have this misunderstanding about how things work, they experience less flow in their lives. They experience more tension, more stress. There's this kind of rejection, denial, lack of understanding about how things work that makes people kind of constrict around certain experiences in their life. And when they constrict, they become fixated, there's more tension, there's less flow. And with a better understanding, a more useful understanding about how things work, that allows for more flow. People can flow more freely and easily through their lives and experience the full spectrum of human experience, which is something that I'm all about, frankly. So there's this idea that people have that there are positive and negative emotions, that there are good emotions and there are bad emotions. And it's just not true. There aren't positive and negative emotions. There's just emotions. And there's nothing inherently good or bad about emotions. There's nothing inherently positive or negative about emotions. Emotions are useful. Emotions give us feedback. Give us feedback about how we're perceiving things, kind of meaning that we're making, what's important to us, what to move towards, what to move away from. Like, emotions are super useful, it's super important, all of them, even though some of them might be less pleasant than others. We might not like certain emotions as much as others, but they're all useful. They're all really useful. It's just a matter of how you kind of respond and relate with your emotions in a given context that leads to, kind of different results. So when you can welcome an emotion, you can allow it to flow through you, then any emotion can just flow through you. But when you experience a particular emotion and you have a response to that, where you end up kind of constricting or tensing up, rejecting around that emotion, like not wanting to experience anger, for example, not wanting to recognize that you're somebody who does feel anger, not wanting to, recognize those aspects of yourself, thinking that anger is a bad thing and that if you experience anger, that makes you a bad person. It's all of these kind of ideas that we build up around emotions that can lead to experiencing anger and suppressing, repressing, constricting around that, denying that that's there, wishing that that wasn't there, wishing that that wasn't an aspect of ourselves. It's all of that stuff. It's labeling something as bad in the first place that creates tension, that creates constriction around it. And that's when things can get stuck. And emotion stuck in the body is not a useful thing. But when we can kind of welcome everything, we can welcome every emotion, we can appreciate the things that our emotions allow for, even something like anger, and then we can just have things flow through us more freely and easily, without needing to necessarily get stuck with a particular emotion or ruminating, just looping around with an emotion. Emotions are great. They're really useful things when they flow. It's just when we get stuck, when we're ruminating, we get stuck in a loop, that's not particularly useful. So, just recently I had an experience with my little girl cat where she was very unwell for a little over a week. Lots of trips to the hospital and emergency and vet and surgery, and it was quite an ordeal. And I needed to continue to perform at quite a high level throughout all of that. I was facilitating a chunk of my NLP practitioner program on a weekend during that time. and we had to leave my beautiful little girl at the vet, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to visit her over the course of the weekend that I was training. I saw her on the Friday night, and I knew I probably wouldn't be able to see her for the rest of the weekend. And I got a call, I think, from the vet on the Saturday morning to say that she had one of her tubes had come out, and she was exhausted as they were trying to put it back in, which wasn't a particularly good sign that she was so exhausted from that. And I just kind of knew that things were not going to go in an ideal direction. And the thing that I was teaching was something that also demanded a lot of me energetically to be able to do well. So I had a few options available to me in that moment. And what I decided to do in that moment was to do some really hardcore state control. My trainer state is quite strong and robust. There's not a lot that can shake my trainer state. And I'm pretty good at just like staying in that state, this nice kind of uptime, bit of a flow state while I need to be in that space. And so I was just kind of texting back and forth with my partner as we had to make really difficult decisions about what was going to happen with our little girl. And she progressively got worse throughout the day. We needed to let her go. We needed to let her go that day. And I knew, as I was kind of texting back and forth in the breaks with my partner about that I felt like I couldn't speak with him. If I spoke with him, I just knew my state was just going to completely fall apart, and I just wasn't sure that I could energetically get back to the level that I needed to be to deliver what I needed to deliver. And texting was okay. I was relatively dissociated in the texting. And so that's what I decided to do in that moment. And I feel like that was a really good decision, as much as I would have loved also have been there with my partner. That was a really hard decision in terms of like continuing to perform at a high level and continue to facilitate this process I had begun with my students. I really feel like that was a good decision to just practice state control and do what I needed to do in the moment to be of service. And that night, I came home and, with my partner, grieving process kind of officially began for me. And I was absolutely heartbroken. I'm still heartbroken. And I didn't feel like I wanted to use the same strategy the next day. I had another full day of training to facilitate. And I've also got a very good relationship with my unconscious mind. And so I outsourced my design for the following day to my unconscious before I went to sleep, which is something I do from time to time. Because my unconscious mind is well trained. My unconscious mind is a better trainer than I am, can do better training design than I can. And so I outsourced my training design for the following day to my unconscious mind and had a good sleep, early night. And I woke up in the morning and true to form, unconscious mind starts presenting this great little design for the day that not only fulfills my outcomes for my students and where we're kind of headed and themes of the training and that sort of thing, but it was also designed to facilitate my own healing, which was really beautiful. And I thank my unconscious mind for that one. So I show up to the training and I open up the day with an open frame, which is an opportunity for people to ask me anything, absolutely anything, questions they have from previous chunks, questions about things from other fields that they're wondering about, like anything at all. And I began that open frame by kind of behaviorally demonstrating something that I had spoken to many times in the group, which was about welcoming everything and about the grief that I was experiencing. And as I was speaking to the group about this grief that I was experiencing and welcoming the grief, I started to, experience the full emotion of the grief that I was experiencing. And then I began to speak to the sensations I was noticing in my body as I was speaking about my grief. And in speaking to the sensations that I was noticing in my body, I had tightness in the throat, tightness in the belly, I was trembling. I also noticed a softening that was taking place, this softening and relaxing around the emotion as it just flowed through me. And this is a really healthy way of relating with your emotions. What transpired from there was that I didn't need to do any state control for the day. I felt really peaceful on the inside. I felt really relaxed and I felt really strong and very connected actually with the group as well. And it's totally possible for me to be grieving and be relaxed, and it's so totally possible for me to be grieving and to be doing something that I love as well, like training and facilitating this process with these students. And it was this kind of like welcoming of all of those things into the mix that really allowed me to actually perform at a super high level that day. The design was great, fulfilled all of my outcomes, and in fact, my human experience added to the training rather than being something that I needed to control or suppress or pretend like I wasn't grieving, pretend like I wasn't a human being, that I was this superhuman robot that had no emotions and could just control all of that stuff. It was, I think, that sequence that I moved through felt really good and really healthy. So on the Saturday, just doing the state control and getting through the day, and then allowing time that evening to kind of begin the process. And then on the Sunday, really kind of welcoming and allowing everything to just be in the mix, and not only be in the mix, but to add and enhance the mix, and to be something like, I was able to just behaviorally demonstrate a healthy way of relating with emotions as well. And I was able to behaviorally demonstrate the things that I talk about so often about staying human, and how you can be grieving and perform at a high level at the same time. You can allow for grief and experience relaxation and peace at the same time. I can grieve and I can still do something that I love, something really meaningful, and be of service to others at the same time. So, there's this really kind of incongruent approach to working with emotions in other ways when we divide them up as like positive and negative, that allows for more constriction around things. So if I was to go into that space and be having a response to my grief that, oh, I don't want this grief, or I can't grieve, or what are people going to think about me if I'm grieving, and all of that stuff, that would create constriction around that emotion, that would create tension, and it wouldn't be able to just flow through me. Now, I'm also somebody, like I teach NLP, so I'm somebody who can change the way that I think and feel and all of those things. But that's not my go-to unless either myself or somebody else that I was facilitating was kind of looping and ruminating. If there was already a sense of stuckness with that emotion, then there might be things that I would do to kind of get in and free things up again. But while ever emotions are just flowing through us, then they're useful and healthy. When we can welcome them, and we can tap into the resources that are there in every emotion as well. Like I do not clean my house anywhere near as thorough and quickly as I do if I'm a bit angry. Like anger can be a real resource for me in getting stuff done around my home that maybe I had been, not paying attention to, not even been on my radar. As soon as I got a bit angry about something, I can like get in and get stuff done a lot faster. So emotions can be really useful. It's just a matter of are they flowing freely through us, or have we got in a bit of a loop? Are we stuck? Are we constricted around them? Are we ruminating? Are we denying that aspect of ourselves? Are we rejecting that aspect of ourselves? Are we rejecting that in other people? Like what's actually taking place there? While ever there's a welcoming and allowing and everything's flowing, then we're all good. So that's something I just wanted to address today. Like, I've had people come into my training rooms before and say that they've been to other trainings where they did a process that was supposed to take care of all of the negative emotions, and they expected to not ever experience those emotions again. Now, that's really flawed in 1,000 ways. But even when you transform an emotion in a particular context, like to say you felt angry in a particular context and you wanted to change that for whatever reason, with the stuff that I teach, like in my NLP courses, yeah, you can absolutely transform that into something else. But that doesn't mean you'll never experience anger ever again. You can change the way that you relate with anger. You can change the way that you respond when you're angry. You can change all of these things. But anger is part of like the human experience. You can't just take that away. And why would you, when it's so useful? It gives you feedback about all sorts of things, the way that you're relating with yourself, with other people, with things that are going on, meaning that you're making, how your thinking is, the way that you're perceiving things, or what's important to you. This is all really, really useful stuff. So I hope that that makes sense, and I hope that I've cleared that up for you today. Emotions are good, emotions are useful. But that's all from me today. Stay human. Bye.